For our 8th day of Get Good, today's shoutout shall be the Imp Master. Congratulations on winning the 8th shoutout. A link to their channel will be in the description. Welcome to a video on how to get good at the All-Star, perhaps one of the most infamous classes in the game, where the community have been victims to perhaps the laziest motherfuckers known to man, where they will just chuck an imp at you and walk away without any second thoughts. Let's get started. The All-Star is a big tank motherfucker of the zombie class, which when used effectively, can outright dominate and shred enemies like they're absolutely nothing. They boast a massive 200 health and move at an above average speed of 7 meters per second, which is actually faster than most other classes. Granted, this changes when they are in combat. The All-Star's primary weapon is of a football minigun that has the potential to fire an infinite number of footballs if the player is capable of firing in controlled amounts. When the player goes to use the minigun, it needs to be primed first, taking 3/4 of a second before the weapon starts firing. You can prime it early without firing the minigun by aiming down sights. However, whilst the minigun is primed or actively firing, the player suffers a 50% speed penalty and is unable to jump. These restrictions apply to every All-Star variant, except for Tennis, who only gets a 25% speed penalty when his weapon is in use. Because of this, a popular tactic, often shared with the heavy sandwich man from Team Fortress 2, would be to jump whilst moving, and then prime your weapon straight afterwards. This allows you to retain your full momentum for a brief moment and often catch enemies by surprise, especially if used when turning around corners. The weapon fires at 600 rounds per minute and can fire for up to 4.6 seconds before suffering an overheat, where the weapon will be unavailable for the next 3.17 seconds. Each shot fired can deal 8 damage for a normal hit and 8.8 for a critical hit. Since the stock All-Star only gets 10% extra damage from critical hits as opposed to 20% extra damage like most of the character roster, the weapon is subject to quite a bit of drop-off, with it going down to 4.5 damage for a normal hit and 5 damage for a critical hit. The projectiles fired arc at a distance and are rather slow, so it is strongly suggested to only engage in mid to close range fights as to ensure the best chances of your shots connecting to the scrubs that you are about to shred. Because of the looming threat of overheating, it is advised to either fire your weapon in controlled bursts or when facing beefier opponents to stop firing for a second, as to allow your weapon to recover and prevent it from overheating mid-fight. The All-Star's first ability is the notorious Imp Punt, essentially the best way of saying, I can't be asked to properly fight you, so I'm going to just instantly kill you instead. The Imp is kicked forward a short distance and has a 1.5 second fuse when it comes into contact with any surface. Once it explodes, it can deal up to 150 damage within a radius so fucking generous, you could go out of your way to deliberately miss and still end blowing up some poor sunflower who probably wasn't even trying to fight you anyway. The Imp Throne also has collision, so you can use it in a comedic fashion to just launch enemies off the cliff, because why the fuck not? Once the ability has been deployed, it will go on a 20-second cooldown. The All-Star's second ability is Sprint Tackle. This will cause the All-Star to suddenly launch himself forward. If any plants are caught within the tackle, they will take 75 damage and be knocked so far back they can travel over the Empire fucking State Building. If they are in a rooted ability like P-Gatling or Sunbeam, they will be forced out of it. But the stronger part of Sprint Tackle would easily be the huge potential of speed ghosting you can do, and effectively can cross the map in the span of a few seconds. Enjoy surprise fucking enemies by appearing in their spawn literally 10 seconds after the game has started. Once the ability has been used, it will go on a 30-second cooldown. The All-Star's final ability is a dummy shield. This causes the All-Star to summon a dummy in front of his current location. The dummy can be used to either block incoming fire for both yourself and teammates, or used to block off certain routes and stall enemies for a period of time. The dummy shield has 200 health and you can have up to 3 of them out at a time. Attempting to place a 4th dummy will replace the oldest existing one. The dummy is actually a lot more powerful than most players may think. as being able to essentially place a wall whenever you like can actually have the potential to shift the tide in your favor, both in offensive and defensive plays. You can block off potentially fatal damage with a single button press or use it as a way to safely attack enemies without exposing too much of yourself. Each dummy shield has a 25-second cooldown, and you can hold up to 2 dummies at a time. The optimum upgrade setup for the All-Star would be the damage, overheat, and health regeneration upgrades, with the overheat and damage upgrades being especially important, as the overheat upgrade allows you to fire for almost 7 consecutive seconds, which when in combination with the damage upgrade, allows you to effectively tackle opponents of any health pool. The health regeneration upgrade also allows you to recover your massive health pool much quicker and get back into the fight sooner. In terms of strengths, the All-Star's 200 health pool and dummy shields allow him to be immensely bulky, difficult to take down, and stall for time in certain situations. His high damage primary and extremely dangerous imp punt allow him to mop the floor with most opponents relatively easily and can clear objectives with a little button press. Lastly, his sprint tackle can allow him to not only cross maps extremely easily but also displace enemies into unfavorable positions. However, the All-Star becomes extremely slow when using his primary weapon, making him ineffective at chasing fast opponents. His primary also has both slow projectiles and harsh damage drop-off, making him not so good at long-range engagements and susceptible to long-range classes like cacti and cords. Lastly, if the player ends up overheating his weapon, they will be defenseless and either be forced to run away or use one of his abilities. Thanks to this guide, you will now be the master of cheesing one-on-one fights with a single button press, as well as being the most hated player in the entire lobby, as people scream and bitch at you for spamming your abilities. Be sure to come back for the next episode tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more shit like this. Have fun.